As an entrepreneur with chronic illness, I struggled a lot with imposter syndrome, feeling like I had to be a certain way, do certain things a certain way. Otherwise, I wouldn't be a real entrepreneur. But today, I'm going to share with you 5 things that I wish I had known about imposter syndrome. And the first is that thoughts are just thoughts. I can think whatever I want. It doesn't make it true. I could think right now that everybody listening to this is rolling their eyes, but I don't know that that's true. I mean, maybe there's a couple of people that are doing that, but I ultimately don't know. That is just a thought. I could be thinking, oh, this isn't a good time for me. I'm not ready. I should be doing more. I should. What if all of those are just thoughts. Thoughts are not facts. I can notice the thought. I can let it just float on past, which mindfulness meditation helps us to do. And I can notice as well what emotions are connected to this thought. As an entrepreneur, there's always going to be a lot of fear running underneath. And so a lot of thoughts that we're experiencing are connected to that. Thoughts of not being good enough, of needing to be better, right? Those are thoughts. And those are fear-based thoughts. So noticing the thought, noticing and being with the fear as it shows up in your body. And so that's one thing that I wish I had known before, that my thoughts are just thoughts. And the only power that they have over me is the power that I choose to give them. And I could give them a ton of power, or I could give them no power. That is my choice. The second thing that I wish that I had known, and I'm going to use an example from one of my favorite shows, Schitt's Creek, to describe it, is that nobody is thinking about you the way that you think they're thinking about you. And that is something that Alexis says to David when she takes him to get his driver's test, because he's feeling really anxious and he's very concerned about what the test instructor is going to be thinking about him. She says this to him because the reality is people aren't thinking about us the way we think they're thinking about us. So when we put expectations on ourselves, that I have to do this because other people are going to see it and they're going to judge me for it. I need to be this person. I need to do everything differently. That is a thought, and thoughts are just thoughts. They're not fact. And we are acting like we're mind readers, like we honestly know what somebody else is thinking about us. I mentioned I have a traumatic brain injury, and there was a night out with some friends, old and new, and I had a terrible migraine. And I wanted to leave early because I was not feeling good. Migraines are the worst. And I didn't want to tell people that I had a migraine and I was going to head home early, because I was like, well, then they're going to want to know why I get migraines. Nobody in the history of anything has ever asked, why do you get migraines? Nobody cares. But I was so worried that people were going to care and they were going to ask. And then I'd have to tell them, oh my goodness, I get migraines because I was hit by a bus and sustained a traumatic brain injury. And I did and I do, and that's why I get them. But nobody cares about why you get migraines. Lots of people get migraines. It's not a thing. Nobody cares. But I thought that they would. And so I didn't tell people. And so I made excuses and I pretended that, like, I'm not living the life of the brain injury when I am. People aren't thinking about you the way that you think they're thinking about you. And the third thing that I wish I knew about imposter syndrome is that imposter syndrome is this felt sense that you don't belong, that people are going to discover you're a fraud, that you don't actually deserve your job, accomplishments, things like that, right? That if you don't look and act and be like everybody else or how you think people think you should be, now that's a little confusing, that you're a fraud, that you're not good enough, that you're just pretending. I can't tell you how many times I referred to my business as a hobby, or that I was treating it like a hobby because my business and the way I ran it didn't look like everybody else's. I felt like a fraud. Now, I run my business in a certain way because of my disability and my brain injury and my chronic illness, but that doesn't make me a fraud. And that's what I'm saying about this. And that connects back to the first two, that thoughts are just thoughts, and people aren't thinking about you the way that you think they're thinking about you. But that was a huge thing for me to realize, that it's okay to do things differently, that doesn't make me a fraud. And this can show up as feeling like everything needs to be perfect. You need to do everything right. you don't have enough skills, you don't have enough qualifications, you haven't been running your business for long enough, you should be doing this, that, or the other, right? As I said earlier, these are thoughts, and thoughts are just thoughts, but this feels differently. And I know that this connects back to thoughts are just thoughts, and people aren't thinking about you the way that you think they're thinking about you. But this goes that one step further because it's connecting into how we feel. This can go a bit deeper when you feel like a fraud is a lot tougher and stronger than some of the thoughts that we might think, right? When I talked about not letting people know that I get migraines, that's a thought, and that brings up a lot of emotions, but it's very different than feeling like because I'm not doing what other people are doing, that makes me a fraud, right? Whew, that's big and that's tough. And so noticing when that shows up and really just trying to ask ourselves, like, where is this coming from? And this goes a step beyond just simply observing the thoughts that we're having. Because when we notice that we feel like a fraud, we could go that one step deeper and ask ourselves, does having this thought help me or does it hinder me? Right? Because if I'm feeling like a fraud, then I'm probably not showing up for myself and my business in the same way. And so it's noticing that. It's reframing our thoughts, but it's digging deeper, and it might involve talking to somebody to help work through some of the stuff that's coming up for you, some of the feelings, seeking a friend for support, going that extra bit deeper if you feel the need to by seeing a therapist, right? As I said, that's the third thing I wish I had known, that imposter syndrome brings up feelings of being a fraud. And I'm honestly an expert in what I teach, because not only do I have my undergrad in psychology, my master's in psychology, have I trained to be a mindfulness-based stress reduction teacher, right? And I've been running my business for a number of years, teaching everything that I teach to clients and to students, right? And already been doing the work with myself and with my clients. So I know that it works. So I'm not a fraud. And thinking that, and so when that shows up, to remind myself that, like, actually, I do have the qualifications and the training to back up what I'm teaching. And just because I do things a little differently than somebody else, I take more breaks, I take naps, or whatever I need to do for my body, doesn't make me a fraud or less than somebody else. And the fourth thing that I wish that I knew about imposter syndrome is how to get out of my own way. Because some of these thoughts can feel so big and so overwhelming that we then decide that it's safer, because it feels safer, to not put ourselves out there, to play small. And that's what imposter syndrome kind of wants us to do. And so learning thoughts are just thoughts. People don't think about me the way that I think they're thinking about me, that my imposter syndrome is telling me a fraud, and that's not true, helps me to get out of my own way. And I notice the thoughts, I notice how it's showing up in my body, I notice the fear that is connected to it, or whatever emotions connected to the thoughts, and I can choose to listen or to ignore it. And by ignore it, I mean to let it just float on past without really attaching to my thoughts, and just let it keep going, and I can get out of my own way. So we're observing our thoughts and we're not engaging in them. We're not really analyzing them too much. We're just, okay, this is what's coming up for me. This is how I'm feeling. This is what I'm thinking. All right. Noticing that I'm feeling really nervous about sitting down and recording this video. And my imposter syndrome is telling me that nobody wants to listen to this. They don't think you're an expert. You're just, who do you think you are, right? Noticing that. All right. This is what's showing up for me. Okay. I can breathe my way through it, and I can do it anyways. And that's how I get out of my own way. And the fifth thing that I wish that I had known about imposter syndrome is that it's probably one of the biggest reasons why people procrastinate, is because, again, it goes back to, I feel like a fraud. I'm not good enough. I'm thinking that, like, nobody wants to hear what I have to say. Who do you think you are, right? All those thoughts, all those things combined together. And now we procrastinate and we avoid and we resist and we don't want to do the things that we need to do, and we get in our own way, right? This fifth thing is kind of a sum up of everything that I've talked about. And it keeps us in avoidance. And we want to avoid avoiding. When there's a big task where I have to be a little bit more visible inside of my business, that I avoid. And so I notice when that happens, and every so often I make, instead of a to-do list, I make an avoidance list, and that's a list of all the things that I've been putting off and avoiding. And so avoidance can show up with, oh, I should have lunch before I get started on this task, or, I really should check my email first, or I should do this first, or, you know what, today's not a good day, the lighting isn't the best, and look at my hair, and oh my goodness, I got this zit on my chin today. No, I should not record this video. I should put it on. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll do it tomorrow. That's fine. Tomorrow's fine. That's plenty of time. But tomorrow turns into then tomorrow shows up. And we say, oh, I'm not feeling so good today. I'm going to do it tomorrow, or I'm going to do it later. And sometimes these laters and these tomorrows can just keep going. As an entrepreneur, one of the things that I do is I have a freebie that people opt in for, and then once they get it, they go into known as a welcome sequence. And I joked before that it took me 3 months and 20 minutes to put together my welcome email sequence. By that I mean, I wrote it all out. Like, I sat down at the computer, typed it all out. That probably took a couple of hours. And then it took me 3 months from when I had typed it all out to actually put it in to my email provider program and to set it up as an automated sequence. Like, the setting it up took 20 minutes, but it took me 3 months to get to that point. And in my work with some of my clients, they have also talked about that. I get 80% of the way through and then I just stop. Avoiding. We stop at 80% and perfectionistic tendencies start to show up, and our thoughts show up, and imposter syndrome shows up. We feel like we're not good enough, and we need to go back, and we need to, this course is what I need to help me to get this thing to be perfect, and then I can send it out, and then I can finish it off, and then I can post the sales page, the landing page, I can talk about whatever, right? Oh boy, imposter syndrome shows up all the time in our lives. And I'm speaking as an entrepreneur, and how it shows up in running our business, but it shows up in everything. I can't talk to that person. They don't want to talk to me. I can't raise my hand in a meeting. I can't do this. I can't do that. Oh no, I could never. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'm not this enough. I'm not that enough. You are enough as you are right now. You are enough. You can do whatever you want to do in your life. You can be who you want to be. And the first step to being able to work with imposter syndrome is to notice how it's showing up in your life. Paying attention to our thoughts and the emotions that are connected to it, all of which we learn how to do inside of mindfulness meditation. And that's why I speak a lot on imposter syndrome to my clients inside the mindfulness journey, because, oh my goodness, it has stopped me from doing so many things. It took me 10 years to apply to get my master's because, they'd never pick me. I mean, it's so competitive. There's so many people that apply. Oh no, I couldn't. My grades wouldn't be good enough, and I don't have enough extracurriculars, and I don't, and this, and what, no. And so 10 years. And as I have my master's, I did get in. And I was like, well, if I got in now, I probably would have gotten in 10 years ago and wouldn't have needed to spend 10 years thinking about getting my master's. What a waste. I never even tried. I didn't honestly know that I wouldn't get in. That was just a thought. And thoughts are just thoughts. And that's why everything I've talked about in this video is all connected. So noticing our thoughts. Thoughts are just thoughts. They're not facts. People aren't thinking about us the way that we think they're thinking about us because they're too busy thinking about themselves. Just because our imposter syndrome, our inner critic, tells us that we're a fraud or we're not good enough doesn't mean that it's true. Imposter syndrome keeps us in our own way. So we want to notice how it shows up so we can get out of our own way. And it leads to procrastinating and avoiding. And so from now on, we're going to avoid avoiding. And so those are the 5 things that I wish I had known before about imposter syndrome.